right,
All
family.
right,
Good
go ahead.
morning. Good evening.
Good evening, brother.
I'm
Good evening.
talking today about
Good evening.
Elisha,
Mm-hmm.
the role of the prodigy and the mentor and the student becoming the teacher. I want that soak in a little bit. The role of the protege and mentor and the student becoming the teacher, the protege. All right. All right, so we're coming from 1 Kings 19 says, Elisha follows Elisha. So he departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of ox before him, and he was with the 12th. Then Elijah passed by him and threw his mantle on him. And he left the ox and ran after Elisha and said, please, let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you. And he said to them, go back again for what I have done to you. 21. And Elisha turned back from him and took a yoke of ox and slaughtered them and boiled their flesh using the ox equipment and gave it to the people. They ate. Then he arose and followed Elisha and became his servant. Now, he was out there plowing out there, and Elisha put his mantle on him and told him to follow him. Now, Elisha was with a nice home, 12 oxen, feeding everybody, but he said, before I go, let me kill my oxen, feed the people, and follow you. All right. Now, Elijah and Elisha is combined together. And I'm coming from 2 Kings 2:2 says, or 2:1 says, and it came to pass when the Lord was about to take Elijah into heaven by whirlwind, that Elisha went with Elisha from Gilgal. Then Elisha said to Elisha, stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel. But Elisha said, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. Number 3. Now the sons of the prophets were there at Bethel and came out to Elisha and said to him, do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today? And he said, yes, I know. Keep silent. Then Elisha said unto him, Elisha, stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho. But he said, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So they came to Jericho. Number 5. Now the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho came to Elisha and said to him, do you know that the Lord will take away your master from you today? So he answered, yes, I know. He said, keep silent. Then Elisha said to him, stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me on to Jordan. But he said, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So the two of them went on. As you know, you see Elisha trying to get Elisha to stay, but he said, I'm going with you wherever you go, I'm going with you. Number 7 says, and 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood facing them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Now Elisha took his mantle, rolled it up, and struck the water, and it was divided this way and that, so that the two of them crossed over on dry land. Number 9. And so it was when they had crossed over that Elisha said to Elisha, ask, what may I do for you before I am taken away from you? Elisha said, please give me a double portion of your spirit be upon me. Number 10. So he said, you have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be so for you, but if not, it shall not be so. Number 11. Then it happened, as they continued on and talked, that suddenly a chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire and separated the two of them, and Elisha went up in a whirlwind into heaven. Number 12. And Elisha saw it, and he cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel and his horsemen. So he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes and tore them into two pieces. As he took up the mantle of Elisha that fallen from him, he went back and stood on the banks of the Jordan. Then he took the mantle of Elisha that had fallen from him and struck the water and said, where is the Lord God of Elisha? And when he had gone astray and struck the water, it divided this way, and that Elisha crossed over. Number 15. Now when the sons of the prophets who were from Jericho saw that he is the spirit of Elijah rest on Elisha, and they came to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. Number 16. Then they said to him, look now, there are 50 strong men with your servants. Please let them go and search for your master, lest perhaps the spirit of the Lord has taken him up and cast him upon some mountain or into some valley. And he said, you shall not see anymore. 17. But when he urged him till he was ashamed, he said, send them. Therefore send 50 men, and they searched for 3 days, but could not find him. Number 18. And when they came back to him, he stayed at Jericho and said to them, did I not say to you, do not go? Right, next slide. Okay, now, Elisha performing miracles. Then the men of the city said to Elisha, please notice the situation of this city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad and the ground is barren. And he said, bring me a new bowl and put salt in it. So they brought it to him. 21. Then he went out of the source of water and cast the salt there and said, thus says the Lord, I have healed this water. From it there shall be no more death or barrenness. 22. So the water remained healed to this day, according to the word of Elisha, which he spoke. 23. When he went up from there to Bethel and said he was going up the road, some youth came from the city and mocked him and said to him, go up, you bald man, go up, you bald man. So he turned around and looked at them and pronounced a curse on them in the name of the Lord. And 2 female bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the youths. 25. Then he went from Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. Next slide. Okay, now it's recorded that Elisha performed 15 miracles. The first miracle he performed was pardon of Jordan. That's in 2 Kings 2 and 14. The second miracle was healing of the waters. That's in 2 Kings 2 and 21. The third miracle he did, he cursed the bears. That's 2 Kings 2 and 24. The fourth miracle was filling of the valley with water. That's 2 Kings 3 and 17. Number 5, deception of the Moabites. That's 2 Kings 3 and 22. Number 6, the miracle of the jars of oil. That's 2 Kings 4 and 4. Number 7, the resurrection of the Semite son. That's 2 Kings 4 and 34. Number 8, curing of a deadly stew with flour. That's in 2 Kings 4 and 41. Number 9, feeding 100 men with 20 loaves of bread and barley bread. That's in 2 Kings 4, 42 to 43. Number 10, healing of Manan. That's 2 Kings 5, 13 and 14. Number 11, cussing Jezebel with leprosy. That's 2 Kings 5, 26 and 27. Number 12, the floating of the axe head. That's 2 Kings 6, 5 and 6. 13, striking the Syrian army with blindness, and they restored their sights. That's 2 Kings 6, 18 through 20. Number 14, deceiving the Syrians with the sound of chariots. That's 2 Kings 7, 1 through 6. Number 15, the resurrection of a man by touching by Elisha's bones. That's 2 Kings 13 through 21. Now, I'm going to summarize with this with a little video I want to share with you.
The Bible story of Elijah and Elisha can be found in both of the Old Testament's books of Kings. They are two of the most notable prophets in the Bible, assisting in the restoration of Israel during a period of wicked rulers. In 1 Kings chapter 17, Elijah is introduced as the seer who predicted a 3-year drought in Israel. At the time, Israel was ruled by corrupted kings whose evil ways brought God's drought upon the land. Elijah, who is living in the desert, is saved by God when ravens bring him food in the midst of the drought that he predicted. Then Elijah goes to the home of a widow and her son, where God has promised to provide food until the drought is over. The story continues as Elijah confronts the evil king, Ahab, about being the source of Israel's problems. At Mount Carmel, Elijah challenges Ahab to a battle between his deity, Baal, and the God of Elijah. The challenge is to offer sacrifices to their respective deities and see who can start a fire to demonstrate their divinity. Ahab's prophets pray to Baal for hours, but nothing happens. When it is Elijah's turn, he boldly soaks the sacrament in water to demonstrate his supreme trust in God to start a fire, despite the fact that he is wet. The drought ended after Elijah's victory over the prophets of Baal, when he called down fire from heaven. Rain fell, and Elijah fled the evil queen Jezebel, who had vowed to kill him. 1 Kings chapter 19. When Elijah arrived at Mount Horeb, he heard God's voice telling him to anoint 2 kings and Elisha as a prophet. Elisha quickly joined him after he did this. 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 19 through 21. So he departed thence, and found Elisha the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him. And he went with the 12th. And Elijah passed by him, and cast his mantle upon him. And he left the oxen, and ran after Elijah, and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, Go back again, for what have I done to thee? And he returned back from him, and took a yoke of oxen, and slew them, and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen, and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose, and went after Elijah, and ministered unto him. In 2 Kings chapter 1, Elijah summoned fire from heaven to slay 2 groups of 50 men dispatched by King. The third group of men was led by a commander who begged for mercy and was spared vengeance. Elijah went and predicted that the king would die from his illness, a prediction that was soon fulfilled. In 2 Kings chapter 2, Elijah and Elisha crossed the Jordan River on dry land, and Elisha, knowing that Elijah would soon die, asked for a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Elijah was then carried straight into heaven in a fiery chariot. Elisha took up Elijah's mantle and used it to cross the Jordan on dry land for the second time. He was given the double portion he had requested and performed numerous miracles in Israel. Elisha's miracles included turning bad water into clean water, 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 19 through 22, multiplying a widow's oil to fill many jars, 2 Kings chapter 4 verses 1 through 7, and even raising a dead boy, 2 Kings chapter 4 verses 32 through 37, 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 19 through 22. And the men of the city said unto Elisha, Behold, I pray thee, the situation of this city is pleasant, as my Lord seeth, but the water is naught, and the ground barren. And he said, Bring me a new cruse, and put salt therein. And they brought it to him. And he went forth unto the spring of the waters, and cast the salt in there, and said, Thus saith the Lord, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from thence any more death or barren land. So the waters were healed unto this day, according to the saying of Elisha, which he spoke. 2 Kings chapter 4 verses 1 through 7. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant, my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord. And the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in thy house? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house, save a pot of oil. Then he said, Go, borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So she went from him, and shut the door upon her and upon her 2 sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. Then she came and told the man of God. And he said, Go, sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 32 through 37. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore, and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up, and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned, and walked into the house to and fro, and went up, and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi, and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her. And when she was come in unto him, he said, Take up thy son. Then she went in, and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. Elijah and Elisha were both very regarded by those in the school of prophets, 2 Kings chapter 4 verses 38 through 41, as well as by the rulers of their country. 2 Kings chapter 4 verses 38 through 41. And Elisha came again to Gilgal, and there was a dearth in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto his servant, Set on the great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered thereof wild gourds, his lap full, and came and shred them into the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. So they poured out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, as they were eating of the pottage, that they cried out and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat thereof, But he said, "Then bring meal." And he cast it into the pot, and he said, "Pour out for the people, that they may eat." And there was no harm in the pot. During a dark period in Israel's history, their influence sparked an awakening among some Israelis. During the corrupt reigns of Ahab and Hazael, God entrusted the charge for righteousness to Elijah and Elisha. The story of Elijah and Elisha may be the most obvious example of mentorship in the Bible. It reveals a lot about the roles of the protege and mentor. In his first meeting with Elijah, Elisha is willing to give up his job, his family, and the life he has built so far in order to follow after a man who offers him mentorship. He slaughtered his oxen and destroyed the yoke, donating the proceeds to his community. This is akin to selling a business and throwing a party with the proceeds. The first lesson. Before qualifying for their own assignment, a protege must be willing to devote time to focusing on the mentor's assignment. Observing another person's life can teach us so much. We can learn from their habits and disciplines, their interactions with others, and even their flaws. If he hadn't first offered himself as a servant to Elijah, he would have remained a farmer and never performed the amazing miracles that blessed so many others' lives. And Elijah said unto him, "Tarry, I pray thee here, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan." And he said, "As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee." And they too went on. And 50 men of the sons of the prophets went, and stood to view afar off, and they too stood by Jordan. 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 6 through 7. According to Bible scholars, Elisha served Elijah for 6 years before Elijah was ushered into heaven. An intriguing test was placed in front of Elisha at this time. The prophets of the time were well aware that Elijah's time had arrived. Elijah told Elisha 3 times to stay behind, but his assistant refused each time. Others were looking on from afar, but Elisha wanted a close-up and personal look at what God was about to do in Elijah's life. Only the one who had persevered was left with the double portion, not those watching from afar. A protege must be willing to stick close to a mentor even when it is difficult to do so. And Elijah said unto him, "Tarry, I pray thee here, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan." And he said, "As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee." And the two went on. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 6. When they first met, Elijah draped his cloak over Elisha's shoulders, but it wasn't yet time for him to assume the mantle of the prophet. However, after Elisha had proven himself to be a faithful assistant, Elijah left him his cloak as a symbol that it was now time for the younger man to fulfill the plans God had for him. Rather than rejoicing that his time had come, Elisha was heartbroken to see his mentor depart, demonstrating that he wasn't serving Elijah solely to advance his own career. He picked up the cloak that Elijah had left for him after he had mourned. A protege must patiently await the appointed time to take up the mantle left by others. We are often led to believe that it is the mentor's responsibility to pursue the protege, but this biblical account reveals that Elisha's success was found in the protege's relentless pursuit of his mentor. It can be difficult to be under the tutelage of another. We are sometimes asked to do difficult things. Perhaps our perception of the mentor is challenged when we learn about the humanity of someone we admire. However, the reward is great for those proteges who persevere through these difficulties until the day comes when the baton is clearly passed on to them. The good news is that Elijah appointed Elisha as his successor. The bad news is that nothing significant has happened in the last 10 years. Elisha went from being the son of a wealthy farmer to serving as a servant to an itinerant prophet. He transitioned from a season of sowing in the field to a season of sowing in his spirit. You, like Elisha, must deal with both good and bad news. The good news is that you have the potential to be a leader. The bad news that it will not happen over leadership necessitates patience and perseverance, as well as serving and seasoning. When you receive a call from God, you may be eager to get started right away. However, God may first call you into obscurity or to seasons of learning during which you feel insignificant, overlooked, and underappreciated. What do you do when you're caught in the middle of expectation and reality? Elisha's example should inspire you to do the following. First, give your all wherever God places you. Second, prioritize God's purpose over your own. Third, until God gives you a vision, assist another leader in carrying out his or her vision. If you're in a season where you're feeling a disconnect between God's call on your life and your current reality, consider Elisha's 10 years of quiet preparation. When you continue to serve with a faithfulness, humility, and good intentions, you make room in your life for God to fulfill His purposes in you when the time is right.
Who is Elisha? The life and ministry of the prophet Elisha is recorded in the book of 2 Kings. Elisha, the son of Shaphat, was a simple farmer, and he was plowing his fields when he was called by God to carry on the ministry of one of the greatest prophets in the history of Israel, Elijah, during one of the darkest periods in Israel's history. Elisha lived in the 9th century BC in the northern kingdom of Israel. The northern kingdom of Israel was marked by idolatry and rebellion against the Lord. Rulers such as Ahab and Jezebel sought to extinguish the worship of God altogether by murdering every one of God's prophets. And yet courageous men like Elijah and Elisha faithfully spoke for God and continued to call God's people to humbly return to the Lord. Elisha was not as brash or outspoken as his predecessor Elijah, but Elisha had a powerful ministry from 850 to 800 BC that spanned the reigns of 4 different kings: Jehoram, Jehu, Jehoahaz, and Jehoash. Elisha's name is a combination of 2 Hebrew words, Eli, which means my God, and Shah, which means saves. Together his name means my God is salvation. In a sense, the life and ministry of Elisha is a wonderful example of the incredible depth and scope of God's salvific work. The Bible depicts Elisha not just as a prophet who simply preached a public message. Rather, the Bible portrays Elisha primarily as a man of God who served the people. Elisha served in the high places, touching state affairs as a valued advisor to kings. His reputation for the Lord was so well established that the kings of Israel, Judah, and Edom all sought his guidance. At the same time, Elisha ministered to individuals on the very fringe of society as he miraculously provided for all the financial needs for a desperate woman who had just lost her husband and was in danger of losing her 2 children to a creditor. Elijah served as the caretaker of the sons of the prophets who were faithfully involved in the ministry of the Lord, providing food during a famine, and even recovering an axe head that was lost in the Jordan River. Elisha also ministered to the foreigner as he healed a man called Naaman, a high commander in the foreign army of Syria. In the end, next to Jesus, Elisha performed the most miracles recorded in the Bible. And he is a beautiful example of the many dimensions of the salvation of God. In the coming videos, we will look more closely at the life of Elisha. But as we begin, what can we learn from this faithful servant of God? Elisha is a treasured picture of the very heart of God. In Elisha, we're reminded that the gospel, the good news of Jesus, is not just for the important people in the world. It's for everyone. God is seeking all, calling everyone to find the joy of His salvation, from the powerful in this world to the very least in this world. God's love extends to the acceptable of society, as well as to the rejected and the forgotten. His salvation is meant for everyone, from the familiar to the foreigner. Through Elisha, we see that the love of God and His great salvation was meant for everyone. And the message of the gospel is ultimately about God reaching down from heaven to love people where they're at, in their needs, in their fears, and in their feelings of hopelessness. And God is calling His people to continue like Elisha, to be the voice and the hands of God to a world in desperate need of His hope and salvation. Thanks for listening to another episode of Good Bible Knowledge. We'll see you next time.
Hi there. Today, I'm taking you 2,700 years back in time. Today, I want to tell you one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's the story of the Israeli prophet Elisha. He always heard God's voice, so he often gave the king advice on his next moves. At that time, Israel was at war with the king of the Syrians.
We will send our armies here, here, and over there. The Israelis will have no chance of escaping.
Elisha was always listening to God, and God told him everything their enemies had planned.
Your Majesty, beware of passing by this place, because the Syrians will go down there.
The Israeli king did as told, and their army escaped the Syrians several times.
Somebody must have told them. Tell me, who among us is snitching to the Israelis?
No one, Your Majesty. It's Elisha, the Israelite prophet, who tells Israel's king the words that you speak, even in your bedroom.
Go and find out where he is.
Your Majesty, I heard he is right here in this town.
Well, go and capture him.
Oh no! Master! What will we do?
Oh, boy, don't be afraid. There are more of us than there are of them.
What do you mean? We're two, and they are, I don't know, thousands?
Come outside with me, boy. Dear Lord, please open his eyes so that he may see. Dear Lord, strike this nation with blindness.
What happened? And where is that prophet?
This isn't the right road or the right city. Follow me, and I'll lead you to the man you are looking for. Just follow my voice. Keep going.
But Elisha had another plan in mind. He brought them right up to the Israeli king.
Dear Lord, open the eyes of these men so they can see.
What? Where are we? Wait, this is a trap.
Elisha, should I kill them? Should I?
No, don't kill them. Did you capture them with your own sword or bow? Do you have the right to kill them? Put food and water in front of them so they can eat and drink and return to their master.
All right then.
Oh man, this is so good. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers!
Thank you so much.
Have a great trip home.
Goodbye.
Bye!
Bye.
Yes, you know. And then they let us go straight home.
What? Really? With such generosity, we better stop harassing them.
After that, the Syrians no longer attacked Israel, so they could live in peace. And the cool part of the story is this. Elijah knew that God was always watching over him, but his servant couldn't see that right away. He only saw the enemies right in front of them. When God opened the boy's eyes, he could suddenly see the huge army sent from heaven, always watching over them. The same goes for us. Sometimes, the only thing we can see are the difficulties right in front of us. But if we let God open up our eyes, we get to see how He's always watching over us. He will strengthen those who love Him.